right. Hey, everyone. Welcome back. This is episode 2 of the BeHinFit podcast. I'm Trevor. This is Brian. And Brian, what are we talking about today?
Yeah, so today I thought, last week we just talked a little bit about ourselves and about the direction we hope this podcast will go. And today I thought we'd just talk about the basics of a fitness program, right? Like, just a lot of this isn't going to be anything new to anybody, probably more of just a reminder, a good reminder of what it takes to have a good, healthy mindset and to really think about what it is that a fitness program is and what it's not, and
Right.
how you can be successful in your fitness programming, no matter what your goals are, no matter what you're trying to achieve. And so I think that'd be a really good place to start, being the second episode, really like the first episode, I guess, of digging in to
Mhm.
fitness, nutrition, wellness, that sort of thing. And then as we get further and further along this line or this road of podcasts, I think it'll be really great to dive in deeper to a lot of these concepts. So today, in my mind, I envision just being a very high level, just basic overview of what a fitness program entails and how you can incorporate that into your daily life and what you're trying to accomplish.
Right. So I wanna start. You mentioned goals. Maybe let's start there because I think that's the hardest thing is you're a fitness coach. I own a weight loss clinic. So clearly, when we talked about this last time, we have different perspectives. We're coming at
Mhm.
it from different angles. But talk about goals. What do you look for with goals with your clients, with you? What do you think is important to start off with? And does that affect the direction that you're going to go? Or does the fitness plan follow the same pattern, more or less?
All right, great question. So I think talking on the last point that you said, does a fitness program follow the same path or have the same components of it, no matter what your goals are? And I would say yes, to a certain degree, but that's at a very high level, right?
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is you've got strength training, you've got cardiovascular cardio training, you've got recovery, mobility, you've got nutrition. All those things are part of a very solid fitness program, no matter what your goals are.
Right.
Now, once you get down into the weeds of it all, really hyper focus on what it is that you're trying to accomplish with your fitness program, then there will certainly be a lot of variation in each one of those categories or pillars. And so I don't know if that answered your question. So yes, it's very generic on a high level, a macro level. But if you want to dig deep and be very specific, things will be my fitness program may be very, very different than yours
Right.
because of what my goals are and what your goals are. But the overarching program will still have and focus on those same categories, those same pillars, those same indicators of success.
Right. So going back to goals, is that the first thing that you talk about? That's the first thing I talk about with my
Yep.
patients is what are your goals? And then we can set a realistic plan with realistic expectations of what it's going to take and what the best practices are and build off of that. But
That's the exact, before I even take on a client and become their coach, we have a very detailed conversation about what their goals are, what their expectations are, how, and also not only just the goals of, let's say it's drop 20 pounds or to get to body fat percentage of 10 or whatever it is,
right,
right? That's very specific, but also what's their timeline and what are their expectations? Do they want to have that's a lot, this is a very, very relatable scenario, I think, with a lot of people, myself included. You have an event coming up, let's say it's a vacation, a cruise, whatever, a reunion, I don't know, a lot of different things. And you realize that, oh, wait, this is coming up in 4 or 6 weeks. And I'm hoping to be able to like lose weight, look better, be more beach ready, like not feel so self-conscious if I take my shirt off. And what happens is like people's expectations of how to get from point A to point B are most times not realistic. And so for me, what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? Where are you? Where do you want to be? That's the easy part.
right,
Second part of that is saying, here's probably a realistic timetable give of where you are versus where you want to be and how we can get there.
right.
So those are the two things that I really vet with my customer or with my potential clients before I hire them, or allow them to hire me on, I take them on,
Right.
is to know what are your goals, and then let's be very, very clear on what that looks like. If
Right.
somebody comes to me and they're like, I need to lose 30 pounds and put on a fat and put on 15 pounds of muscle in 3 weeks or 3 months, that's not going to happen. Right.
Right.
But it's doable. That losing 15 pounds of body fat, putting on 15 pounds of muscle, that's certainly doable, but you're going to look at a timetable that's a lot longer than 3 months
Right.
in most cases. Right.
Right. Now that's the same thing for us. We coming from the other end where mostly people are wanting to lose weight. We talk to them and say, where do you want to go? What is your projected timeline? Realistically, we can count on 6 to 8 pounds a month or whatever it is.
Yep.
I would say it varies depending on how well you're doing with your eating plans or whether you're exercising or not. But realistically, this is the time frame, and it's
Mm-hmm.
generally a lot longer than people want to
Yeah.
think. But
Oh, go ahead. I didn't
I
mean to
was
cut
gonna
you
say,
off.
but it is important to have that set, have that goal, so then we can talk and plan. Because if you don't know where you're going, then why are we even doing this? You don't
Yeah,
have a plan or somewhere that you want to stop. It's hard to plan. It's hard to do anything.
exactly. I think for me, it's getting crystal clear on expectations and timeline. That's the biggest thing,
Hmm.
because what I've found in the past is when I don't do as good of a job of setting those expectations and being very clear, then I
Yeah,
have clients that become frustrated, right? And
right.
they wonder, did I make a mistake hiring Brian as a coach, or what am I doing wrong? There's a lot of things that can get in the way there
Yeah,
mentally. And let's be honest, when you're going through a fitness program or lifestyle change in terms of diet, nutrition, etc., like it's grueling. It's
yeah,
not an easy thing. It's not for the faint of heart.
right,
So making sure that you, as a coach, I feel like it's my responsibility to make sure that you understand this is doable, but here's the reality of the situation. You're not going to be able to come in and drop 30 pounds in 6 weeks by doing very little and not changing your diet, not changing your habits,
right,
behaviors. And so that's been a huge thing that I've learned, especially early on in my career, to make sure that now that I'm a little bit more seasoned, to make sure that is very, very clear before I even hire, or not, I keep saying hire, but bring someone on as a client.
right. I agree. So putting goals aside, because I feel like we could spend just like any of these, we could spend an hour talking about goals, how to choose them,
Yeah.
what you should really focus on. But hypothetically, let's go to your scenario where I need to lose 15 pounds of body fat and I need to build 15 pounds of muscle. Walk me through that. What does our fitness plan look like? And granted, it changes depending on your goals, but let's just start there. That's my
Yeah.
goal. I'm looking to build 15 pounds of muscle, lose 15 pounds of fat, and I don't necessarily have a timeline. I just need to do it.
Sure. And I mean, I think it's a very common goal, right? People want to drop body fat, but they don't want to be skinny. They want to have muscle. They want to have that lean mass that we're all chasing. And so, if that were the case, and I guess it kind of depends on what your fitness level is, right?
Right.
So, if you're a beginner, let's just say in terms of strength training, weight training, you haven't done much in your life, it's a lot easier to stimulate the muscles to grow by a lot less input or a lot less force
Right.
implied upon those muscles. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Whereas someone who's been consistently lifting weights, doing strength training for 15 years, it's going to take a lot more stress on those muscles in order for them to grow.
Right.
And so, with that being said, let me just give you a quick breakdown. Let's say you've never lifted weights before. You wanted to drop 15 pounds of fat and put on 15 pounds of muscle. You could probably do that in a year, honestly.
Hmm.
It would probably take a year of dedicated training and watching your diet, changing your behaviors, making sure you're focusing on recovery and sleep and managing stress, those types of things. You could easily stay at the same weight, but your body composition could change completely
Yeah.
over that year. However, you look at somebody like me, who I've been lifting weights probably I would say pretty consistently from the time I was 14. Right after freshman year of football, I started going to the gym, and I've still been in that process. If I wanted to put on 15 pounds of muscle and lose 15 pounds of fat, that would probably take 3 years,
Yeah.
to be completely honest with you. If you're doing it naturally, you're not having any PEDs or any of these other things, right? If you're doing it the right way, the natural way, that's
Right.
just the way it is, because your body builds up resistance. It builds up a tolerance. That's why you talk about in your strength training programs, you talk about progressive overload, and the body needs more and more and more because it adapts to whatever it is that you're doing.
Right.
So if that were your goal, again, it just varies. It varies depending on your fitness level, how long you've been lifting weights, and focusing on fitness versus not doing anything and being a complete beginner.
Right. So let's continue this scenario. So
Yep.
I'm no, what's it called, stranger to the gym, but I am not dedicated like you. I've
Mm-hmm.
gone in spurts of probably 3 to 6 months of working out, followed by a couple of years at not, and then back and forth. But we worked out together
Yeah.
multiple times in multiple stints. But I would say I am a fairly typical 34-year-old guy who's not necessarily super athletic, but not just a normal guy. So, assuming that that's our goal, what would be our first step to set up? Would you say you need to do 5 days of lifting, and here's your cardio plan,
Yep.
and you need to make sure that you're getting whatever hours of sleep and that you're not overdoing it and you need rest, and how do you walk a person like me through all of that?
So whether your scenario, whether you're brand new to fitness, or whether you're trying, in my situation, you're wanting to, let's say, compete in bodybuilding competitions, there's probably 5 pillars, maybe 4 or 5 pillars, or components of a fitness program that are going to be the same, right? That's the structure.
Right.
And so maybe we can walk through each one of these. The first is strength training. That's strength training, resistance training, lifting weights, whatever you want to call it. That's the foundation of muscle growth and metabolism. And so every plan that I will put together, from the entire that I have put together and that I will put together for the rest of my existence, is going to have strength training. And that can vary depending on your goals, your age, what weights, what equipment you have, etc. But everyone should be doing some sort of strength training. And there's there's a various, what's the word I'm looking for? There's a variety, that's the word, a variety of different ways to incorporate that into your program. But every program will have some sort of fitness or strength training, resistance training, etc. And the reason for that is because there have been many, many studies that have shown over time that the more muscle you have, the better it correlates to longer life, better heart health, better blood pressure regulation. In women, especially, it helps with osteoporosis. And so by building muscle and maintaining muscle, it is a game changer as you start to age and get older. And the foundation of that, even if, let's say, you're 25, right, or you're 20, you're not worried about any of those things, right? Osteoporosis or high
Right.
blood pressure, but it's laying the foundation.
Yeah.
It's the basics of any workout program. And with that, I would say everyone should be lifting some sort of weights or body weights, doing some sort of resistance training. And a couple other things to note is like progressive overload. We talked about that earlier. And what that means is lifting heavier or more over time, right? And so whether that's, if you have a program and you're working on, let's say your program says 3 sets at 12 when you're doing a bench press, right? Over time, the weight that you're using to hit those 3 sets of 12 should increase
Right.
slowly and steadily over time. Or else, to the point we had earlier, your body's going to adapt, and you're just going to be like, your body's amazing with anything, not just fitness, but with anything pertaining to your body will adapt, and it will regulate, and it will cause whatever the current situation is to be the new norm, to be the new standard. So if I'm lifting weights and I just say, let's, for sake of argument, let's say I'm 3 sets of 12 on a bench press and I'm doing 135, and I do that for the first couple of weeks, that's gonna cause my body to adapt.
Right.
If I keep that, and for the next year, I don't add any weight, I don't add any time under tension, I don't add more reps, more sets, etc., my body's just going to plateau because it's adapted.
Right.
It's taken this as the new norm. This is what it's expected of me. And I'm just going to sit here. And I only give as much energy and effort and time into that I need so that I can hit whatever expectation and whatever outside stress is given. And so that's a big component. And that's where a lot of people struggle, to be honest, is the progressive overload. They'll get a program, they'll do really well for 4, 5, 6 weeks, and then they don't push themselves. They don't overextend from where they started to where they are now, and
Right.
then plateau. And then that brings a lot of frustration, a lot of confusion, a lot of disappointment. And so that's a huge thing that I structure. One of the things, if I were your coach, I would meet with you regularly, but every probably 6 weeks, if not sooner, we would start talking about your programming and how do we increase that load, right?
Right.
So that's one thing. Another thing about strength training is a lot of questions are how do I break up my splits or the body parts that I work throughout the week? And there's many different ways to go about that as well. There's full body workout, there's upper body, lower body, push, pull, legs day. And so it all just depends on what your goals are, what resources you have. And by resources, I mean the gym, weights, but also time, right? If I'm a busy dad or a mom or whatever it is, and I'm working full time and I've got a side hustle or whatever it is, and I can only get to the gym 3 times a week, guess what? That's still doable.
Right.
We can come up with a program that's allowing you to hit every muscle group that you need those 3 times a week, and you'll be fine. If you have more time and you enjoy going to the gym and it's just one of those things that's non-negotiable and part of your routine, like, we can program a workout or a fitness program where it's like we can go every single day and you're not
Right.
going to burn out your muscles, you're not going to be overloaded, you're still going to allow for recovery and that sort of thing. So I
Right.
think that's the first pillar of a solid fitness program, no matter what your goals are, no matter where
Right.
you are in this journey.
Right. So we'll get into more of that later in another episode. I am sure we'll talk about strength training,
Yep.
why and everything. But let's move on to the next pillar. What is the next pillar in your magic list, so to speak?
So the next thing is cardiovascular training, your cardio, your typical cardio, everybody's favorite.
Right.
And the thing that I like to think about here is balancing heart health versus fat loss, right? And what I mean by that is, clearly, if you're doing something that's strenuous on your heart, cardiovascular exercise, your heart's going to be required to perform at a higher level than if you were not to do these types of exercises.
Right.
The byproduct of that, though, is that in order for your heart to keep up with the demand physically, it needs energy. And so it taps into glycogen. If you carbs, let's say,
Right.
certainly when you think of marathon runners or these endurance athletes, they're constantly like feeding themselves high simple carb, I don't know, gels or fruit snacks or something like that that really allows the body to digest that quick burst of energy.
Right.
Or the other thing, if you're in a longer, if it's a more extended state training, then your body will tap into fat storages that you have in your body and use that as fuel.
Right.
And so that like I said, that's a byproduct. The main thing about cardiovascular or training, or just cardio for short, is the fact that it's not meant, its primary focus is not for fat loss. It's just not. It will aid in fat loss, but it's not the primary focus. It's more, again, like I said, to make sure that your heart is healthy, which then allows you to be able to be more active, have more energy, and it lowers obviously your heart rate,
Right.
right? The stress that's put on your heart, high blood pressure is mitigated by that, and just overall well-being. There's so much to be said about cardiovascular training. But where that's been skewed and misconstrued in the fitness industry is, oh, I'm just going to do an immense amount of cardio and that's going to help me lose fat. It's going to get me in shape faster. And that's just not the primary purpose of cardio.
Right.
And so that would be the second thing. But that being said, everybody should be doing some sort of cardiovascular training, because your heart, it's obviously very crucial and very important for your well-being and your health and your longevity.
Right.
And the better you take care of it, the better off you're going to be as you age, and it'll extend your life and allow you to do the things that you want to for an extended period of time. So yeah, that's the next thing and it depends on your goals, right? Like, I would suggest that everybody do 3 to 5 sessions of cardio per week at a minimum. And that could look very different for each person, right? There's 3 types of cardio. There's low intensity, steady state cardio. There's mid intensity, steady state cardio. And then there's HIIT, which is high intensity interval training, right? And so each one of those plays a different role in your program. And just for example, let's say walking. Let's say you go on a walk every morning for 45 minutes. That's low intensity, steady state cardio. And by steady state, where your heart rate is, right?
Yeah.
If I'm walking just outside, going for a 30-minute walk, my heart rate's going to be elevated because I'm up, I'm moving, but it's going to be steady at a certain zone.
Right.
And then if I go, let's say I'm going to go jog for a minute, I want to go run for 3 miles, 5 miles, whatever it is, that's mid intensity steady state because my heart rate's going to be elevated, but it's going to be within a range. It's going to be pretty steady. And then the other is HIIT, which is high intensity interval training, where you try to push yourself almost as hard as you can. And then you like it suggests an interval. So you push yourself really, really hard, and then you back it off for a minute. And then you push yourself really hard, and then you back it off again. And so each one of those has a different strategy or a different purpose. There's depending on your goals, what you're trying to accomplish, each one of those can play a significant role, and some aren't very good for you, to be honest. No matter, depending on what you're trying to do. A lot of people ask how much cardio should I do? How much do I really need? And again, that's very dependent upon your goals. If I'm training for a marathon, then clearly I'm going to do a lot more cardio than I would if I was just trying to get in shape, trying to lose some weight, put on some muscle, etc.
Right.
And a lot of people ask, what's the best fat loss or the best cardio method for fat loss? And for a while, the thing was like, I'm just going to run, or I'm going to do all this high intensity interval training in thinking, in theory, it makes sense.
Right.
I'm going to burn a lot more calories because I'm pushing myself to the brink. But
Right.
what studies have shown, as we've gotten more data and we're a little bit more advanced in how we analyze those studies, is that steady state cardio, whether it's walking on an incline at 3 miles an hour, an incline 10 to 12, or you're doing 20 minutes of stairs, that's the best way to burn fat. And so for me, if that's your goal, that's what I would incorporate 3 to 5 times a week. And if you're wanting to do, let's say, honestly, I wouldn't feel comfortable training you or taking you on as a client if you were wanting to train for a marathon or like an ultra marathon or an Ironman.
Right.
That's just not my expertise. But the little that I do know is that you would be doing a lot more cardio. You would have to be able to build up that endurance and work on the muscles, and they're tied to your breathing and to your heart rate, that sort of thing. And so it just depends on what you're doing and what your goals are, which I think is something that we could be said about all of these things that we're going to talk about today.
Right. Well, perfect. So I don't know, you either fall into 2 camps. Either cardio is your thing or you hate it. I have hated it unless it's been something like racquetball or whatever, more the sporty side of things. But what are your thoughts on? I know a lot of it depends on factors, your age, your weight, your goals specifically, what you're training for. But like, are you a proponent of, no, you need 30 minutes a day, period? Or is it like, if you're someone like me and a lot of the people I work with, and I know we've talked about this because you helped us develop our workout system for our course, but
Mm-hmm.
if I can only commit to 10 minutes a day, or I commit to taking the stairs at work instead of going up the elevator, or whatever that happens to be, is that acceptable to begin with if we're moving forward? Or like, I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but like, some people like me aren't necessarily, were intimidated by the idea of cardio.
Sure.
And so, I don't know, I just was wondering your thoughts on that before we move on.
I think all those things are great. And again, it goes back to what your goals are, right? And the timeline of those goals. If you have a certain event or you've set a deadline of saying, I want to get to X in 3 months, then we're going to have to probably dial in cardio, and it's going to have to be more of a priority.
Right.
But if that isn't necessarily the goal, and sorry, not the goal, but that's not the timeline. If you're just trying to get in better health and this is going to be a lifestyle, then absolutely, let's do what you can. To your point, nobody really likes cardio. I don't care if you're a marathon runner and you just that's your favorite thing. You don't love running every day.
Right.
There's actually a girl I went to high school with that's a very incredible long distance runner, and she on Instagram started a new page, and I've kind of been following it a little bit. And she's being very candid about training and running and all these things. And she's like, there are days where she just doesn't love it. She doesn't want to do it.
Right.
And so I think for cardio's sake, it's what can you do that's sustainable? What can you do that's going to what can you commit to, basically? If
Yeah.
I program and say you got to do an hour of cardio every day and you just know you're not going to do that, then I've failed as a coach and haven't set you up for success as a client. And but if we in our discovery call, if we talk about where you are and what you think you're capable of, then we'll program something where it's like you 10 minutes of stairs, 5 or 3 times a week or whatever it is.
Right.
Be very, very mindful of where you are, what you're trying to accomplish, and go from there. And I think as the more you do cardio, the more comfortable you feel. And for me, I hate doing cardio. It's more of a mental thing for me. I can physically, I can run, I can walk stairs, I can walk on an incline, whatever for forever. But it's just like the idea of saying I've got to do this for 30 minutes.
Right.
Like, that's the struggle that I have.
Right.
And so what I've found is if you can build upon that and do 10 minutes and then move up to 15, move up to 20, like it makes it a lot easier to be successful and sustainable.
All right. Well, let's leave it there for cardio. Let's
Yep.
move on. What's your third pillar?
So the next is recovery. And these next ones, we've kind of been long-winded with physical or with the weight training, strength training, and then with cardio. And maybe we can speed these up a little bit just for the sake of
Of
not
time.
boring our listeners. And that's my fault. Sometimes can be long-winded. But the next thing is recovery. And I think a lot of times people neglect recovery. And by recovery, I mean sleep, hydration, and stress management. I think we'll look back in 20 years and realize that we completely missed the ball as a society and as a fitness industry on the importance of those three things.
Yeah.
And we're starting to get to that point. There's been a lot of studies and some clarity around these things where sleep, hydration, and stress management play such a huge role in your overall fitness and trying to accomplish your goals.
Right.
And so I make sure that's a priority for my clients is getting adequate amount of sleep. They say 7 to 9 hours. I suggest at least 8,
Mhm.
honestly. 8 hours of sleep is what we need. Hydration, making sure you're not just drinking water, but you're getting electrolytes and staying on top of that. And then doing things to manage your stress or your cortisol levels, because cortisol has been shown to really have a negative impact on your weight, on your insulin levels, on your energy levels. And so that's a big deal and a good way to really accelerate the goals that you're trying to accomplish with a fitness program.
Right. So just briefly, talk to me about water, staying hydrated, especially the electrolytes part of that. What's the quick version of the science behind that?
So when we're dehydrated, when our body is lacking or feeling lethargic, and I guess for lack of a better word, I don't know what the word is, dehydrated, it's not that we're lacking water, but it's the electrolytes that are found in our bodies, potassium, sodium, magnesium. Those are the things that really, like when we feel dehydrated and we're thirsty, it's because our body is craving those things. And so if I were to just drink water and not get any of those electrolytes, those minerals or whatever you want to call them, like, that's not water is not going to save me. It's not going to help me. And so we get a lot of that stuff through our diet, right? The things that we eat. But if we're just drinking water, it's not going to optimize the hydration levels that we need to be performing at our best. And so a lot of things, again, like I said, over the next 20 years, we're going to look back and see we can miss the mark on this. But hydration is one of them. And Now there's all these powders, these electrolyte powders, hydration powders, whether it's liquid IV or there's a few others that are escaping me, but that people will take in the mornings, right? And I think that's another thing is too, is like we wake up super early, or sorry, not whether we wake up early or not, but we wake up and we're super dehydrated because we
Right.
haven't had anything to drink for 8 hours or whatever it is.
Right.
And what we've decided is the norm as a society is to just decide we wake up and we start drinking caffeine, whether that's coffee, energy drinks, soda, whatever, it doesn't matter, right?
Right.
But that's not optimal, right? We need to make sure that we're hydrated and that we're getting electrolytes to replenish those that have been depleted over the duration of the night.
Right. So
So,
is it, I'm trying to phrase this the right way, but like if you say you need sodium and potassium and whatever the other one is, like, is that something that I can just take a supplement for and
mhm.
drink water, or is there a bet like are
Yeah.
is liquid IV really the way to do it, or do I need to
So
balance my diet better?
I think, right, like all the above. If you're getting adequate vitamins and minerals from your diet, then you're going to be less hydrated when you wake up in the, sorry, low
Right.
hydrated when you wake up in the morning. However, we just, by the way that society is and the way that we've constructed our lifestyles and our diets, that's just not something that really happens.
Mhm.
And so most people are dehydrated throughout the day. And the reason why you feel poorly, the way you don't perform at your highest and you're lethargic, whatever it is because you're dehydrated. That's the first step that I would look at.
Mhm.
And again, it's not just drinking water, it's making sure you're getting those electrolytes. And so, to your point about supplementation, I could take a magnesium and a sodium and a, what was the other one? I can't remember. Anyway, those potassium, thank you. I could take supplements, whether it's pills or powders or whatever, and that will help, right? But when we get into like these liquid IV and these rehydrate type products, they've taken that the inconvenience of supplementing and
Uh-huh.
putting it into one little thing, one powder, right? So you get up in the morning, you take a scoop of your liquid IV or whatever hydration product, your supplement you're using, and you drink 32 ounces of water, and you're set, you're good, you're back on track, right?
Right.
And so there's really, and that's something that again we can talk about supplements in greater detail down the road, but supplements are like they're just that, they're to supplement and support everything else that you're doing.
Right.
And so if you're not able to get enough protein, then a protein powder is going to help you get bridge that gap, right?
Right.
Same thing with hydration. If I can get an adequate amount of the electrolytes my body needs to perform at its highest, then I'm great. But if not, then I look and I turn to either one, changing my diet, changing what I'm doing, or two, supplementing. And that's where a lot of these hydration powders come into play.
Right. All right. Well, what we talked about sleep, we talked about being hydrated. What was the third thing in the recovery?
Right.
Stress management.
Yeah. So just taking time for yourself, right? Taking time to step back and breathe, to meditate, to pray. I think we're in a society where the norm is to go and push, which is great. It has a lot of benefits, but a lot of times we neglect our own body and how we're feeling and what our body is trying to tell us. And so if you can take a few minutes here and there to just relax and to breathe, whether it meditate, like I said, pray, those types of things really, really go a long way in lowering your stress, your cortisone levels. Those cortisol levels are the better. Cortisol has a really interesting, it's a hormone, right, that our body produces. And the main point of cortisone or cortisol, sorry, not cortisone, cortisol is as we start to come out of our sleep cycle, our cortisol levels rise because that helps us wake up. That helps us, our body temperatures drop when we go to sleep in the middle of the night. It raises our body temperatures back to where they need to be.
Mhm.
And then it helps us become awake and alert.
Right.
And that's a great thing. We need that in our lives. But what happens is we have all these other things. So like if you look at you're sleeping, and as you start to come out of your sleep, your cortisol levels will rise and they'll help you be awake, alert, get you moving for the day. And then if they're optimal, they'll drop back down. So what we found is a lot of these other things that we're doing to ourselves, whether it's working too much, overexerting ourselves, that doesn't allow where we don't allow that cortisol level to drop. And so it just stays at a high level all day. And that just is not good for any part of our fitness and our well-being.
Right.
And so trying to manage that stress and to not allow it to overwhelm us is where we're really going to see a huge benefit. And a lot of people talk about cortisol or cortisol belly, right? Especially in men.
Mhm.
And it's like men struggle to lose weight in their midsection. You could be shredded, veiny, big legs, defined calves, whatever, but then you take your shirt off and you've got this little tire around your waist, right? Love handles, whatever. A lot of times, part of that is because your cortisol levels are too high, meaning your stress is too high and you're not able to manage that. So if you can figure out a way and a balance to drop those, then you'll see a lot improvement in those areas of your body composition and what you're trying to accomplish.
Right. All right. Well, let's move on. Let's leave it there. We'll
Yeah.
revisit, I'm sure, but let's talk about pillar number four.
Last pillar, just nutrition. It's the nutrition fuels our performance and our recovery. Everybody probably is familiar with calories, and most people are probably familiar with macronutrients, which are proteins, carbs, and fats. And so, it's of these four pillars. I honestly think that recovery and nutrition are the key, right? Those are the two that are going to if you can hone in on those, lock in on making sure that those are dialed, that's when you're going to see the optimal results.
Yeah.
Is taking care of your body, sleep, hydration, stress management, and then making sure that you're eating the right types of foods and eating those types of foods in the correct amount.
Right. And this is something we could also talk about for hours and days on end because there's just so much information
Yeah.
out there. There are so many conflicting, maybe not even conflicting, but there are so many different schools of thought. You should do this or that or whatever. But what do you recommend most for your clients when they start out? Is it calorie counting or macros, or does it really matter to begin with? Or
So I think it does matter. Yes, it does. If you want to boil it down to its lowest level, losing weight or gaining weight or maintaining weight is all about calories in versus calories out. How many calories am I burning versus how many calories am I fueling my body, right?
right,
And so I think calories are absolutely important. That's one data point. That's one goal and metric that we need to follow and use
Mhm.
while we're going through this fitness journey. But not all calories are created equally.
Right,
So if you look, and that's where macronutrients come into play. So you've got proteins, you've got carbohydrates, and you got fats. Each one of those has a different caloric threshold, I guess, or right, I don't know the right word. Each one of those has a different calorie allotment assigned to it, right? So protein, 1 gram of protein is 4 calories, 1 gram of 4 calories, and 1 gram of fat is 9 calories, right?
right,
And all those calories, number of grams I have of protein, of carbs, of fats, multiply that 4 by 4 by 4 or 4 by 4 by 9, and then add those up. That's the number of calories that I've consumed in a day.
right,
And so, like I said, calories out. If I wanted to lose weight, and that was my only goal, I could eat donuts every single day, every single meal, as long as I'm not burning more or I'm burning more calories than I am eating calories of donuts. Does that make sense?
yes,
Right. And now, obviously, that's an extreme example, and no one would be able to sustain that because I'm losing weight, but I'm also losing energy. My insulin levels are high. Probably my blood glucose levels are high. There's a lot of different things that play into that.
right,
And so, for me, what I tell my clients is that the two number, like, unless you're trying to, let's say, again, bodybuild or you're a performance athlete, if your goal is to lose weight, I usually will find your maintenance level of calories, right? Which means if I go about my daily activities, I don't change anything, this is how many calories I burn. And so then I can eat that many calories. And if I match those, if I mirror those, then I don't lose weight, I don't gain weight.
right,
I just stay the same. So you find that maintenance level. And then if your goal is to lose weight and lose fat specifically, I'll drop you down by 500 calories. So let's just say, for sake of argument, your maintenance level is 2,500 calories. So I'll program you at 2,000 calories. So there's that 500 calorie deficit
Right.
each day. And a little side note here, a pound of fat is the equivalent of 3,500 calories, right? So if I want to lose a pound of fat, I have to be in over the course of a week, I have to be in a 3,500 calorie deficit over that week. That
Right.
makes sense, right? If I can do that, so 500 calories, 7 days a week, that's 3,500 calories. In theory, if everything else is dialed, nutrition, recovery, fitness, etc., cardio, I will be able to lose a pound of body fat per week. But
Right.
anyway, that's what we would do. And then a rule of thumb is making, and sorry, maybe let me backtrack just a second. So calories is what I set. And then protein out of the three macronutrients is probably the one that I focus the most on. And the reason for that is because protein is the building block of muscle. Protein synthesis is the process of building muscle and increasing your muscle mass.
Right.
And in order for protein synthesis to happen, you have to have adequate amounts of protein. And so when I'm coaching and I'm starting off, especially if this is such a new concept, no one's ever counted calories, nobody has counted macros, they don't know the difference. The things that I focus on are calories and then grams of protein. And a rule of thumb of protein is 0.7 grams to 1 gram of protein per every pound of body weight that you want to be at, right? So your goal weight, I should say, your goal weight of, let's say, 200 pounds, I should be having anywhere from 170 grams of protein up to 200 grams of protein per day within that underneath the ceiling of that calorie deficit, right?
Right.
So 2,000 calories, 200 of those, so 800 of those calories should come from protein, which would be the equivalent of 200 grams of protein.
Mm-hmm.
And then carbs and fats can fill in the rest.
Right.
That's usually what I do, and that's pretty sustainable, pretty easy to track. So instead of tracking 3 or 4 numbers, you're tracking 2 numbers.
Right.
And that will work really, really well for the average person, right? That's just trying to get in better shape, lose fat, put on muscle, etc.
Right.
And so that's where I start with my clients.
Awesome. Like I said, I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but
This could be a full episode easily,
oh,
right?
absolutely.
This is very, very high level.
Right.
And one last thing I'll say about nutrition, and then we can wrap up. We're getting close to an hour here, but whole foods are better clearly than processed foods and then also supplements, right? We kind of alluded to this earlier on in the podcast where if I can't get the nutrients, the macros, the calories that I need from the foods that I'm eating, that's where supplementation comes into play. But in a perfect world, you're going to be getting all of your calories, all of your proteins, fats, carbs, etc., from whole foods.
Right.
And try to limit processed foods as they don't have the nutritional benefit that whole foods do.
Right. Perfect.
So,
I mean, it's we all know these things, these things, but knowing them and putting them into practice and doing all of that, that's the hard part. And that's why I started off with this episode, because we all know the benefits of strength training and muscle. We all know we need 8 hours of rest, and we know that when you're stressed, that causes different hormones in your body, and we all know those things.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's the foundation for everything that we want this podcast to be about is we need a solid foundation. So then we can go into, strength, certain, supplements or, anything that we want to talk about moving forward.
Yeah.
We need this solid first. So I appreciate you. You carried the bulk of this episode,
No, I was just kind of dominated. Right?
one hard to contain all of that, pure whatever, but no, you are the expert when it comes to the fitness side of things. You've done the fitness coach certification. You've been lifting for years. I really appreciate the wealth of knowledge that you have, which is why I, the lead where you know what's going on.
Absolutely.
So anyway, we'll end right there. It's been almost an hour, I believe. So we'll stop right there. We'll be back next week with another episode. And we anyone listening, like, follow, leave a comment. anything you want us to talk about, we're happy to go into depth. We'll answer any questions you have. We appreciate all y'all for listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Let us know if there's anything you want to talk about, like any more details or going into deeper depth. Yeah, we're happy to do that. So we appreciate you, and we'll see you guys all next time.
All right.